Hello, everyone. Welcome to the studio and welcome to another episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate all of your support. Please make sure that you follow along here on Instagram or YouTube or wherever you're watching. I do appreciate the time, and it is the dog days of summer here in Nashville. I am back here in Nashville in the studio. Busy as always, like most of you, just trying to pay the bills, do great work, and continue to progress professionally, but also musically. Very much inclined to really dig in and get down to business. The business of making music. The last few days, I'll be honest with you guys. These are the dog days of summer, and it is hot. It is extremely hot here in Nashville. When I was in New York a couple weeks ago, it was also extremely hot. So, the grass is, it may be greener on one side, but it's not any cooler. That's for sure. It has been a very hot and muggy summer so far, and it doesn't seem like we're in for a break anytime soon. So if you're anywhere near the water, count your lucky stars. And here in Nashville, I will be frequenting the pool scene because water of any kind is better than nothing. But I had an amazing time in New York, and I want to thank you all for taking that ride with me. And so many of you were engaging with the content from that trip, and I really appreciate it because as much as I'm trying to get my name out there musically and professionally. It was really all about integration. That trip was really all about connecting, and I've been so grateful ever since moving back to Nashville, how connected I've been able to stay to my beloved New York. I mean, you guys know what New York has meant to me over the years. If you know me personally, it's not, an act. It's not something that, I do for brownie points. It is who I am. New York made me, and I'm just incredibly grateful to still have so many incredible, deep, and sincere friendships, and a lot of them, I can attribute directly to music, to playing shows. And as I'm talking about this, it is a nice reminder, because there have been some difficult days. I've been having some car trouble. It's been difficult to get around. In New York, I dealt with the subway for years. Here, you deal with cars, and it's by no means my first time dealing with cars. It's not my first time living in the South, and this adjustment, it's had its challenges. But I will say, I guess I can give myself a pat on the back and say, I really am proud of the way I've handled it. Difficulty comes, there are going to be times in your life where you face tremendous adversity, and I can tell you that there's a lot of weight on my shoulders to make a lot of things work. And I think if there's anything I've hung my many hats on over the years, it's that when the pressure's on, that's when I rally, and that's sort of been my identity as a person, and that I can tell you comes directly from how I was brought up in the city. And I say it all the time. The way I grew up was very similar to Peter Parker. Queens and Staten Island, there are parts of both boroughs that are full of townhomes and feel slightly suburban, and the city's just right over there. And it was a very romantic childhood to kind of have Manhattan literally be that city on a hill, or in my case, at the bottom of the hill, really, because Staten Island is very much, steep. It's got some steep hills and stuff. So we would look down Forest Avenue and turn the corner, and it just looked unbelievable. And as a kid, growing up in Staten Island, you might lose your connection to Manhattan, on a daily basis. But then to have your parents drive you around and kind of see it there in the distance, that's that's a core memory for me. And Staten Island is very precious to me. And I've had thoughts about hosting shows in Staten Island, and Carrie Ann shout out to Carrie Ann, who is one of the artists that we brought in on one of our very first Tunes and Brews showcases, and she has since started her own nonprofit where she does use music to great effect. And you know, as a kid from Staten Island, to see what she's done, also being from the borough, it's just impressive. I'm really proud of that community of artists, and I have to say, since returning back to Nashville, it's been a similar experience with the Creative Pulse community, and Angie Jane, and everyone here coming together, all the artists who performed at the last Attic show. It was incredible. And, you know, we share each other, we support each other. You know, it's not about being perfect. It's not about being chauvinistic. It's about the music, plain and simple. And the more you make it about the music, the more you make it about the people who create that music that you love and that you remember. You know, those songs, if they spin in your mind, you know, check in with that artist, because, you know, if you're a fan of theirs, let them know. It's something that artists at every single level appreciate. You know, we want to know, we want to hear from you, you know, what it is exactly that you enjoy about our particular brand of music. It's a really cool way to interact with people. It's a really cool way to discover more about yourself as an artist, and I just think that there's such a benefit to that. So the last 2 weeks have been, first of all, exhausting. You know, because the heat that I'm describing to you here, it was also in New York, and I think you guys saw, if you follow me on Instagram, you know, I tried to go to Central Park and I tried to relax and just kind of enjoy the moment. It was quite hard to enjoy it when it was that hot. I kind of, I'm ashamed to say it, but I ran for cooler pastures. It was tough. It was not it was not easy. So once again, folks, I think the moral of the story is there are positives and negatives no matter where you go. I'm incredibly proud to be from New York. Don't get me wrong, and I miss it dearly as always. But unlike, you know, in the past, when I either have been moved without it really being my decision, or, you know, kind of had to, for financial purposes, take a break for a time. You know, this time around has felt different. This has really been about, you know, taking things to the next level, you know, and really allowing myself to embrace this journey. And I'm super proud of the fact that, first of all, I'm proud of Casey, aka Umzungu, who has been an incredible creative partner, a musical partner, a brother to me, has just done amazing work helping us, you know, organize a little bit, and honestly, you know, get our shit together and really put this plan in motion. There have been some really cool calls and really cool offerings from from partners in the music space, everything from music technology and audio equipment to, you know, venues, non-music venues wanting to host, and you know, all of our artists who have just been so supportive, and, you know, stayed to watch each other play, and, you know, have just been, I have no words. It's humbling in the best way. You know, this is what I want. I wanted the focus to be on the neighborhoods where we play our shows, and I tell you what, man, I haven't played a formal show in about 6 months, and, you know, I was so stoked to get to play the rooftop party in Brooklyn. You know, it did end up raining, so, you know, we moved it into the apartment. It was tight, but it was a lot of fun. And shout out to Boston Flowers. You know, Sam, cheers to you, buddy. You know, for bringing that area together. You know, that Williamsburg, Greenpoint area. You know, it's right over the bridge from Sunnyside, which is, you know, where I lived in Queens for so many years. So many years. And I just, you know, it was great to see Curly down the block. It was great to see, you know, my good friend Ben. It was, you know, there was just so many moments of happiness that just felt so close. And at the same time, there were plenty of people I didn't get to see. So I look forward to seeing you guys next time. And, but yeah, man, this is where I get to have some fun and I guess enjoy the spoils of the work, because we have formed our brand, and this is sort of going to be an official announcement. But, you know, Casey, aka Umzungu, and I have formally opened T&B Entertainment, which he and I will kind of be spearheading. But we want to obviously continue to partner with people who share this passion. And I'm going to stress this a lot. It's not about perfect people coming on board. It's about people who really care about each other and care about the music. We just saw the Knicks, and I have a very special guest here today. My good friend was nice enough to join us. This is the captain of the New York Knicks, ladies and gentlemen, Jalen Brunson. Jalen, thank you for being here. Thank you for being so reliable as a friend and as the captain of the now NBA champion New York Knicks. I digress. I'm excited to announce that we're forming T&B Entertainment. It's a progression. It's a furtherance of. It's an evolution of the Tunes and Brews idea. That name was really all Casey, all Umzungu. I helped kind of put things together. And that's sort of we all have our talents and our specialties, and I think mine is just being a madman and running around and making calls and sending emails to the effect of like, hey, what can we do together? Like, what's possible? Would you be interested in this? This is cool. This is what we've done. How about we do this? And look, either people go for it or they don't. And I think in the past, before venues started to say yes to me, particularly, and then as I've introduced them to Umzungu, it was, I don't know. I think there was a bit of a resistance. What is this? What is this guy selling? And it's never been a smokescreen. Like, we want to deliver these great moments for people. We want to come into your venue. We want to highlight you as a venue. We want to market you as a venue. We want your products out there. We want our artists to talk about your products. This is not rocket science. What it is what advertising was supposed to be. We care about you. You opened your doors to us, and we want to play for you, and we want to play for your fans, and we want to play for your community because you let us in here and you have something to say and you have something to offer the community, whether that's cannabis products, whether that's a great place to stay, when you're traveling, whether that's a brewery, a dispensary, or I don't know, guys, it could be anything, a park, anything. It could be an apartment. It could be something like that. But the intention is to allow these venues to become a destination. Obviously you have a great product to sell, but you're also going to be on our channels for having hosted these amazing music-led events. So there is a lot of, it will become a T&B Entertainment destination. And I think that's the key, is that, we as a collective would love to be a part of the way you advertise, in other words, reach your community. And I've spoken about this in other podcasts, but, the advertising model has become a blunt instrument. There's no nuance to advertising, and we've gotten away from a little bit of the sincerity of caring about a product, caring about the process, caring about the positive impact that product or venue could have on not only musicians, but even more importantly, their fans. The music fans love to interact with brands that their artists interact with and use. And that's a reason why, commercials became a thing at all, So and the idea of commercialism has been co-opted by people who have one goal in mind, and that's just to scale and make money. And you can't scale until you build something sustainable. And so what we have done is exactly that. What we've done is use our messaging, use our talents. And some of these artists don't even like to talk as much as I do. And I've been the one to talk on their behalf, which is something that a lot of artists who I know who are successful in this business and also not successful stonewall each other. They don't support each other. They don't vocalize their appreciation for what another artist does or for another artist's concept. And I think that that's incredibly counterproductive. I think, what artists need to support artists. Let's be real. Support each other. Be cool, because be easy to work with. Don't be a gatekeeper. Don't be someone who thinks that you can keep an emerging talent from bursting through the floor. Because that's what emerging talent does. It breaks the walls down and it brings people together. And that's exactly what we're going to do at T&B Entertainment. Make no mistake. I have no intention of playing second fiddle to people who are arrogant and people who want to only talk about themselves when they get up there. It's exhausting. And I'm sorry, self-indulgent. Once again, as an artist, what I try to do, my approach, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, and I'm not saying it's better or worse, but my approach is observational. Of course, everyone wants to hear a good love song here and there, but I think, when it's all the same, when it's all about relationships and it's all about breakups and it's all about trauma, you're going to break people down. We want to lift people up. I have a song coming out. It's called Stargazer. It's about looking to the stars. You should be writing about what you see, guys. We should all be writing about what we see because we're missing the moment. We're so busy talking about ourselves that we're not talking about our time. We're not talking about our environment. And it's frustrating to see us miss the mark the same way that the brands are missing the mark who we think have become homogenized and are stealing too much of our potential. Well, all you want to talk about is you. So why don't you go and talk about trends? Why don't you go and talk about Flagship Brewery? Why don't you go and talk about any business, that you appreciate? Why don't you go talk about Marley's here in Nashville? Why don't you talk about it, right? Because you're so busy talking about you, right? And that you miss guys like us. You miss people like us who are the talents, who will give you that voice, who will write for your generation and for generations past, generations to come. That's what songwriters do. We bring generations together. That's the power of musicianship. And when you lose musicianship and when you don't invest in that, and instead you replace it with garbage, people shaking their asses on TikTok, and it's ridiculous. And this is what has gone on and created this just ridiculous sideshow of wannabe artists climbing the charts and AI artists climbing the charts and climbing all over my back and climbing all over my neck, man. Just pressing down on the people who are really doing this, and who really have a history in music education, music production, instrumental proficiency, vocal proficiency. There is a barrier to entry to music. It doesn't have just to do with your following. It doesn't have to do just with what you're putting out there on social media. If you make that the priority, you will box out the best people who are playing the music of your generation right now. They will never have a voice. They will never have a platform. We'll always lose to these wannabes. Will always lose because, they have the time and the money to play around with. And people who are really trying to survive and living paycheck to paycheck and have debts to pay will not. We will not survive. We won't survive this moment. You're going to destroy us. So you have to get out of our way. You have to let us be. You have to let us speak our minds. You have to let us be messy. You have to let us be emotional. You have to let us do all of those things. We should be talking about the moment. And when I say all of that, when I talk about being messy and allowing yourself to really unburden yourself emotionally, I'm not just talking about your fucking breakup. I'm not just talking about your toxic relationship. I'm not just talking about all of the traumas. Yes, we need to talk about those things, but maybe mix in a couple of different subjects because it can't happen that this show becomes a therapy session for you to make people uncomfortable and alienate listeners. Can't happen. It just cannot happen. And yes, I'm going to put my foot down and double down on that because the best artists playing the biggest venues, the biggest festivals today And hats off to Justin Bieber and hats off to Ariana Grande. They are, what are they showing? What did JB do at Coachella? He whipped out a sampler and he starts building beats and he's looping on guitar. That kid knows production. I call him, he's not even a kid anymore. You know, it's crazy. We're living in a time where Justin Bieber is like an old man in the music business, but hats off to him. He's evolved, right? He's a killer drummer. We know that. He's a killer piano player. I was surprised to learn that. And he knows how to produce. So you think he gets up there and cares to talk about just his marriage or just his past dating life? You know, no, he's got other things to say. Ariana Grande, same thing. Thank you. Yes. Yes. And she's awesome. And look, I didn't know much about her. I don't go out of my way to learn a whole lot about pop stars because in the past, I've been disappointed with some things that I've seen. But Ariana Grande, I was surprised to learn recently, is a crazy good producer, like a really proficient producer. And if you tell me that you're a producer, that you don't just have the voice of an angel, that you don't just look like one, that you don't just have the ability to play instruments, but that you can also run your own, DAW sessions and mix and master your tracks. I mean, you're a heavyweight. You're a juggernaut. And that's why I respect Phineas. That's why I respect Billie Eilish. And look, the list goes on. I mean, all the guys in Nine Inch Nails. You guys know how much I love Moby. Moby had his moment at Coachella too. And it was, yeah, here's what I want to point this out because this is hilarious to me. And I need to get the gentleman's name, who is the vocalist. Oh my God, where did I just put my phone? Oh shit, it's right here. Here, I'm gonna Google it. The gentleman who sang on Moby's Coachella. Just one second, folks. Okay. Wait, no. Jacob Lusk. Jacob Lusk. Jacob Lusk. I have no words. I just think that, I was lucky to sing with some guys growing up in the choir who had these big booming voices and were just incredible. But Jacob Lusk is a rare type of voice that is so powerful and rich and so distinct that he could just quiet any room in the best way because you're blown away when he starts singing. And I am lucky because I've been listening to Moby's music for a long time. I knew what was coming in that song, but I could tell that the audience at Coachella had no idea. And the audience reaction, not only to hearing the power in Jacob's voice, but also in response to hearing a live vocal, that is hilarious to me. They were as surprised that there was a live singer there recreating a track and sounding better than the recording. They were shocked because, and what does that tell you about the current state of music festivals? That they're absolutely dominated by DJs. Now, you hear some fun vocals during DJ tracks. How many singers are actually showing up and performing that vocal at DJ sets? And it's a fair question because it doesn't always happen, right? And I love James Hype and I love I'm blanking, but there's so many DJs that I love right now that I listen to them all the time in the radio. It's primarily EDM playing in my car. And back in New York, when I was commuting an hour a day on the subway to get to work, it was also EDM. But a big part of that was Moby, and a big part of that was Jacob Lusk, and his voice is an absolute powerhouse, and I just cannot get over that performance. It was amazing. So I'm so happy that these artists, these pop stars, like, shout out again to Justin Bieber, Nine Inch Nails, Moby, the list goes on, Ariana, for being the ones to stand up and show the game how it's done. Show the world what it means to not just be a great pop star, not just be a great singer, but be a great producer. And not only be able to produce the set, the live set, and orchestrate it and be the music coordinator for all of that, basically the conductor, right? In a very Hans Zimmer way. I mean, that's how Moby functions. And frankly, that's how I function as an artist as well. I'm best when I'm in an environment where we can actually take a little bit of instrumentation from classical music, from EDM, from hip hop, from R&B, and just mash them all together. And it's very satisfying. And I think the artists who we've been talking about already today demonstrate that. They demonstrate excellence because they demonstrate proficiency, not just as a singer, not just as a songwriter, not just as a producer. They bring it all together. And it's so impressive. It's so impressive to me when people can do that. So I think we need to be aware of what's going on, which is we're stepping away from automation, right? We're stepping away and we're getting back into analog performance. And it's been a lot of fun for me recently in the last several days. Since being back here, I said, I need to sit down and play. I need to sit down and play my piano, and I need to practice my songs just on the piano. And so that's what I've been doing. And I've been preparing myself for getting down to basics. Production is great. Production is something that I've really enjoyed. And my show is going to use some production. It will always use production. I'm a one-man show, baby. I'm a one-man band. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I ain't giving it up. I'll never play in another band as long as I live. Bands are fun, but it's rare that every guy in the band feels the way I feel and is obsessed to the point where I want to level up. And so a lot of musicians over the years I've known just haven't had the work ethic to really kind of break through. They're their own worst enemy, and they just don't have the drive, and they give it up, and they just fold their cards. And it's really, really, it's not sad for me, but I'm sure it is for them. But I think also, the times have changed. I'm taking my destiny into my own hands. I'm not giving it to somebody else. Certainly no AI will ever sound the way that I sound, and if they do, put me on a fucking screen with them. You know why an AI can never replicate me? Because I don't know what the fuck I'm about to say. You think AI can predict me? No. In the same way that when I was a martial artist, you couldn't predict where I was going to be because I didn't know where I was going to be. And part of understanding tempo and rhythm translates very well in a physical way. And I was very happy to discover as a fighter that, my understanding of how to disrupt someone's timing translated in a way that was very musical and very violent at the same time. So, man, that was fun. I miss sparring. It was so much fun. I miss martial arts tremendously. It was something that, a lot of people will look at it and go, that was a bizarre side quest. It wasn't for me. It was never a side quest. That's just who I am. And I think I'm a conundrum for a lot of people. We haven't gotten into this, but I'm a conundrum I'm a problem for a lot of people. And here's why. Being a choir boy and, who happens to be not just creatively interested, but also I'm interested in sports. I'm interested in boxing and Muay Thai. And I also love to sing and write music. I think, I'm not saying I'm the only person who can do that, but I do think, we are living in a time where people just expect you to fit into one mold or the other. And I never really have, I've never fit any mold, and I've never tried to. In fact, I'm a stubborn dude. And the more people try to make me fit into a box, the more I come bursting out of it because it's not interesting to me to stay the same. It's not interesting to me to not challenge your boundaries. It's not interesting to me to stay in the same place. It's just not, and I think that if I've struggled, it's because I've refused to get in lockstep with a lot of people who I had a lot of problems with in terms of what they were asking me to do. I worked for a recruitment firm that sat me down in a conference room along with a bunch of coworkers, and was teaching us how to lie. Was teaching us, this asshole guy. He used to, so he's the owner of a recruitment firm, and he would force us to show up early on Fridays, which is when he chose to have his bullshit little brainwashing sessions. And this dickhead didn't even have the nerve to buy breakfast. If I was expecting people to be in the office at 7 o'clock on a Friday, I'd buy him a fucking banana. You know what I'm saying? I'd probably buy him more than that. But this guy who, was a cheap ass anyway, never, who lowballed us on our salaries, didn't even have the balls to buy us donuts or buy us any, a cup of coffee. So let's start there. And then he proceeds to teach us his tactics, which were to lie to receptionists, give them false names so that, we could bypass them and get to the CEO so that we can, have that conversation. And I watched and listened to CEOs hang up in this guy's face, and poor secretaries, transfer a call because they were just exhausted dealing with him. And it was gross. It was a really gross abuse of power. It was a gross attempt to brainwash young people and make them his minions and make them lie to people as well. And I just thought the whole thing was really awful. And as always, I was the only one in the room who said, "You're asking me to lie to people. I have a huge problem with this. I ain't doing it." Everybody else had no problem saying like, "Oh yeah, great. Good job." Like, "Oh, this is very useful." And it just showed me how spineless so many people are, who, and I'm not saying I wasn't friends with some of these people, but, it's disappointing to see them fold, and not have the courage to say, this is wrong, because here's the thing. The difference is, if everybody has my back and agrees and says no, do you think he continues to do this shit? No, of course not. Right? Because it's not cool to be unpopular, right? I almost said his name. No, it's not cool to be unpopular. Wow. Oh, he's pissing his pants right now if he's listening to this. I hope so. I hope so. I hope you are. I hope you know exactly who you are. And that's what's funny is that, you can make a lot of failings in your personal life, and you can do a lot of dumb shit. But when you're controlling the destiny of other people, it's a really shitty thing to do. And look, I'm guilty of it, right? In relationships. And I know that, plenty of people can probably relate to that. And, I'm not saying I'm blameless, because I'm not, right? And, when I left Staten Island, we moved to Florida when I was 12 years old. I fucking hated it. I didn't talk to people. I was a crotchety asshole. I did what I had to do, and I got back to New York, right? I dropped out of college where I got my scholarship by singing for it. And then I just didn't enjoy the experience of being there. So, I was depressed and lonely, and I was like, you know what? Get me the fuck out of here. Get me the fuck out of here. Let me get back to New York. Let me get back to what I know. And enough of the bullshit. And, it's difficult growing up, having this hope of New York in your future and feeling like Peter Parker. And then being moved into this farmland that, where people were idiots, and not everyone, but at the time, I mean, Central Florida in the year 2000, wasn't exactly Switzerland. You know what I mean? It wasn't what it is now. Now it's a very popular place to be. The city has grown. There's a lot of people there. But at the time it was a lot of ignorance and a lot of harassment for wearing my feelings on my sleeve. And, so my way of coping with that is to just shut off, and to just kind of close off myself. And I became very muted and very awkward, and, there for a number of years there. And that was, again, my way of just protecting myself, not getting too attached just to a place that I thought, was not being accepting of who I am. So all that to say, yeah, there's some shitty people in this world who will ask you to do shitty things. And then there are the moments where, you won't always live up to your own expectations, and you'll do shitty things. And there are repercussions for all of it. Right. But I think as long as you're willing to be honest, as long as you're willing to deal with it in a way that is useful and channel it in a productive way, it doesn't have to define you, right? That guy doesn't have to continue to host these meetings at 7 in the morning without having the consideration of, maybe not doing that on a Friday, maybe having the consideration of, maybe not making people bring their own breakfast to an early meeting an hour before work and asking people to lie, and I've been disappointed. And I've said this on social media before, in business owners who, these were young employees, and he was not a young man. He thought he was, but he wasn't. That was another issue. But, it's a thing. It's a thing. And I think being so bold only happens when your bad behavior is rewarded in some way. And I think, I've been a good guy before. I've been a bad guy before. And, luck is one thing, but I think that the only way to fail without ramifications is if you were either born with money or made yourself a fortune. And as far as I know, he made himself a fortune. But he was very brazen about, doing things that were sketchy. And, it's I know that that type of behavior can come from pressures, financial pressures. It can come from, again, just having done things a certain way over the years, and not being sort of checked for it. It can come from addiction, which I have some experience with. This kind of stuff can happen. You can become someone that isn't the best version of yourself, and it's very important to keep yourself in check and make sure that you're not stooping to the level that got you there, right? And you wake up in the morning and you realize that, you're not the person you want to be. You're not the person who your parents, raised you to be. And so that can be sobering in the worst way. But also knowing that through therapy and support groups and other types of recovery tools, you can get better. And what's important is to have access to the healthcare that can allow you to kind of understand the error of your ways and move forward. And that was taken away from me. I lost my health benefits, and it's been very difficult to stick to the regimen of recovery and physical health and mental health, emotional health. But I think I'm doing fairly well. I'm able to still see the positives despite all of the things that have happened to me over the years that I would consider my trauma. That I'm happy to talk about. I'm happy to write about. I'm happy to sing about it, play about it. But even I get bored of that, and wanna start to look at the sun again. And I want to start to talk about what is working, because I think the more we do that, the more we'll help each other get through darker times, which is what we're living through right now collectively. I think the American experience right now is hard. We have people running this show that are just completely off the reservation. They're completely out of their minds, and it's a crazy time to be an artist. It's a crazy time to want or need healthcare. It's a crazy time to be anything but, a straight Christian white person. It's not easy for people to stand out in a climate where people are afraid of you, and being biracial and being thought of as white all the time, which is something I've pushed back against consistently over the course of my lifetime. And have been disappointed in some people who let their guard down around me because all they see is my whiteness, and have said awful things to me about minorities, including my own family. So I think it was time to make some cuts and get that negative energy out of my life, and that's what I'm doing. So it's been good to be in a different place and see what the cultural dynamics are here in Nashville. Which, when I was in Florida, I had a really hard time, but I think being here in Nashville specifically, it's a good mix. It's a good mix. I've had some great conversations with people whom I don't agree with at all politically, or, in terms of their ideology or their outlook on life. But we can have a conversation. They know which way I lean, and we can have an ideological discussion. We can have a more philosophical back and forth about where they're coming from. People, no matter where they land on the political spectrum, no matter where they land in terms of their outlook on life here in the U.S. or elsewhere, um, are usually, in my experience, coming from a decent place. You have the ones who are the exception to that, who are often the loudest and cause the most division. But I think, in my experience, I've been very encouraged by the fact that a lot of people out there just want things to work and want things to be equitable and fair, and they want to be left alone, and want to be able to mix and interact with different kinds of people and learn about them, right? So, I mean, that dates back to the earliest days of my youth, where, growing up in the music programs and the choirs, and friends and other classmates who, were different in terms of their sexuality, or the color of their skin, or otherwise, whatever else makes you quote unquote different. Um, we were having very, very, what I would consider progressive conversations in Central Florida, way back in the early 2000s. So I've been able to find my tribe over the years. People who are very accepting, people who are very open, and I've been very fortunate to rub shoulders with people, to have relationships with people who really believe in equality. And when people don't live up to that, it is very disappointing, and it does bum me out. Being someone who is both Irish and Indian, white and brown. You can be both. That's a thing, and it's been something that I've carried around for a lot of years. I haven't really known how to address it consistently or coherently, and yeah, it's something that I struggle with. Race, like most people, being biracial in this country, um, has its challenges in terms of how people view you and look at you, and it's something that I'm always thinking about in the background. I'm tremendously proud to be of Guyanese descent. I'm incredibly proud to be my grandmother's grandson, Matrani Sitaram, who is an inspiration to all of us. We have a big family. She was an inspiration. She belonged to all of us, and not just one. And nobody was her favorite. Man, we were all equally important to her, and not just the family. Beyond her and her 13 children, and I mean, I lost count of the grandkids, and great grandkids, but people in her neighborhood, loved her. My grandmother came to this country, not knowing how to read or write in English, and would sing her Hindu songs, and she had her special shrines on the walls, and it was a beautiful religion, Hindu. Uh, the Hindu religion, the way that they interact with the sacred gods of that faith. Uh, I was raised a Christian, but my parents would bring me over, and she would sing, and man, I have such great memories of that. The beautiful saris that she would wear with these gold sashes and beautiful pastel colors, and she's a hero to me, and these are where these are the places I get my demeanor from. She had a calmness to her. And I can say that, my father's side of the family is a good match for that. The Canlins are, we're Irish, but we've been in New York since the 1860s. Brooklyn and Staten Island, and, many of us kind of moved around, but, my father has this great sort of calmness about him, and his dad had the same thing, and he was handsome as a devil. He was Don Canlin, that's his name. Don Raphael, that was his name. And I mean, it was cool looking in the mirror every day, and knowing that there was some resemblance there, and I am so grateful to both sides of my family, to both of those heritage, I'm sorry, both those countries that I get the chance to represent in a very proud way. That's what being an American represents to me. I grew up in the shadow of the Statue of Liberty, and again, I've sort of described to you guys my experience of taking the ferry to Manhattan, and just kind of knowing, just always feeling that this is where I'm going to be. this is where I'm going to go. And it's a very similar conversation to the one that Peter has in the first Spider-Man film, with Mary Jane. It was that. What are you doing? After after high school, where are you going? What are you going to do? It's, going to the city. Yeah, me too. I'm probably going to end up in the city. Oh, okay. I'll see you around. And then maybe not seeing each other for a period of time, and then having these awesome moments of getting hammered in the getting hammered in the city, and meeting people, and having these amazing interactions, and just nights I will never forget. Um, and I look forward to. I've already had a few here in Nashville, but I look forward to having more, and having more experiences with people here. It's been special, and I can't wait to see where it all goes, man. I'm super excited. I want to thank you all for being here. This is the longest episode I've ever done. Thanks for sticking around, and hopefully you'll be back, because I love doing this, and the only way it's going to grow is if you guys continue to like and subscribe, and just join me on this ride. I promise you, I'll try to keep it as entertaining as possible. And I love you guys for being here. Thank you so much. Be yourselves, please. Be yourselves. Be unfiltered in the best way. Be honest. Help people. Make our grandmas proud. Take care, folks.